So for the last few months, I have had the privilege of doing Bible studies with three of our storyliners. Their names are Janet, Molly, and Susan. I'm so glad you made it. And getting to see these women on a weekly basis has been a huge blessing in my life. It's actually one of the highlights of my week. And just about a month or so into our getting to know one another, Janet shared with me an amazing story called Unawares. My title is Unaware. The story itself was called Unawares. This story was passed down to Janet by her mother. Janet passed it down to me, and now I want to pass it down to y'all. So buckle up, put on your seatbelts, and let's hone in on what it is that this story has to say. They said the master is coming to honor the town today, and none can tell at what house or home the master will choose to stay. And I thought while my heart beat wildly, what if he should come to mine? How would I strive to entertain and honor the guest divine? And straight I turned to toiling to make my house more neat. I swept and polished and garnished and decked it with blossoms sweet. I was troubled for fear the master might come ere my work was done, and I hasted and worked the faster and watched the hurrying sun. But right in the midst of my duties, a woman came to my door. She had come to tell me her sorrows and my comfort and aid to implore. And I said, I cannot listen, nor help you any today. I have greater things to attend to. And the pleader turned away. But soon there came another, a cripple, thin, pale, and gray, and said, Oh, let me stop and rest a while in your house, I pray. I have traveled far since morning. I am hungry and faint and weak. My heart is full of misery, and comfort and help I seek. And I cried, I am grieved and sorry, but I cannot help you today. I look for a great and noble guest, and the cripple went away. And the day wore onward swiftly, and my task was nearly done. And a prayer was ever in my heart that the master to me might come. And I thought I would spring to meet him and serve him with utmost care, when a little child stood by me with a face so sweet and fair. Sweet but with marks of teardrops, and his clothes were tattered and old. A finger was bruised and bleeding, and his little bare feet were cold. And I said, I am sorry for you. You are sorely in need of care, but I cannot stop to give it. You must hasten otherwhere. And at the words, a shadow swept over his blue-veined brow. Someone will feed and clothe you, dear, but I am too busy now. At last the day was ended, and my toil was over and done. My house was swept and garnished, and I watched in the dark, alone. Watched, but no footfall sounded. No one paused at my gate. No one entered my cottage door. I could only pray and wait. I waited till night had deepened, and the master had not come. He has entered some other door, I said, and gladdened some other home. My labor had been for nothing, and I bowed my head and wept. My heart was sore with longing, yet in spite of it all, I slept. Then the master stood before me, and his face was grave and fair. 3 times today I came to your door and craved your pity and care. 3 times you sent me onward, unhealed and uncomforted. And the blessing you might have had was lost, and your chance to serve has fled. O Lord, dear Lord, forgive me. How could I know it was thee? My very soul was shamed and bowed in the depths of humility. And he said, the sin is pardoned, but the blessing is lost to thee. For comforting not the least of mine, you have failed to comfort me. Honestly, quite a beautiful story with a very powerful message. And so my question is this: what happened? What did the main character in the story do wrong? She was excited for her master's coming. She was eagerly anticipating and expecting his arrival. She didn't become lazy when she heard about his coming, but rather got to work and began preparing her home for him. Now, the story doesn't say this, but my guess is she fluffed the pillows, baked some really delicious food, was probably going so fast at such a quick rate, she probably didn't feed herself, right? So what happened? I think it would be a good idea for us to break this story down together today and learn from the main character's mistakes so that way her mistakes don't become our own. So that way her mistakes don't become our own, and that we too cannot be caught unaware, expecting our master's arrival. So we're going to look at 5 key takeaways. 5 key ways in which the main character failed to receive her master, and 5 key ways in which we can be ready for our master's coming. Sound good? Okay. Here we go. Key takeaway number 1. She failed to prioritize the needs of others. According to the story, there was 3 separate times that the master came to her door. He first came as a sorrowful woman who needed comfort. Second, he came as a cripple in need of food and a place to rest. And third, he came as a crying child in need of new clothes and some first aid, right? The child was bleeding. And 3 times out of 3, she turned her master away. All of this because their needs were not of as much significance as her own need of cleaning her home and being prepared to entertain her guests. Not only did she fail to prioritize the needs of others, but she prioritized her need over the need of others. And how relatable is that? How often do you and I fail to prioritize the needs of others? And not only that, we prioritize our needs over the needs of others. It's funny because I think oftentimes these tests or trials come our way when we are busy and don't have time. I think our master allows us to have these tests come our way when we are busy doing things we deem important, just to see how we will respond. And if we miss the opportunity to bless someone else due to our selfishness, hopefully we're self-reflective and introspective enough to notice what happened and to seek to do things differently the next time around. Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem others better than themselves. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." Christ so identifies with humanity that when we, in humility, take care of the needs of others, he feels that we take care of his own needs. My hope is that we as a church would start to do this very thing, that you would start to prioritize not only your own needs, but the needs of those in our church. Like, look to your left and to your right. How many people are in church today? Quite a bit. Yet, I don't know what the majority of y'all are even going through. So how can I even know how to help you or serve you or take care of your own needs? My hope is that as a church, one, we'd better get to know one another. From there, find out what is it that I can do to bless this individual. And then three, move forward and do that very thing. Key takeaway number 2. Rather than being busy doing the things God gave her to do, she got busy doing the things she gave herself to do. We oftentimes get busy and hurried doing things that God never gave us to do. And oftentimes we exchange what God is calling us to do with what we are calling ourselves to do. According to the story, was it required for her to clean her home? Anyone? No. According to the story, was any requirement given to the citizens in order to receive the master? No. The master himself would choose to reside with a citizen regardless of the condition of their home. No command was given to clean the home. However, she became consumed by this idea that her house had to be clean, and anything that would try to get in the way of her reaching this goal would be denied. She thought she was doing a good work by cleaning her house for the master's arrival, but being in a rush to complete the good work, she forsook the responsibility to complete the greater work of helping those in need. I want us to think about all of the responsibilities that we put on ourselves as Christians. All the external and internal pressure that we put on ourselves as Christians. What percentage of these things has God given us to do? And what percentage of these things have we given ourselves to do? What have you given yourself to do that is crowding out your having time to do the things that God has given you to do? I feel as though, for me, I can speak, I feel like there's a false sense of fulfillment that I receive from being busy and having a lot to do. That somehow I'm more valuable if I'm busy. But I just want to say we are not more or less of a person depending on how busy we are. I'm going to say that one more time because I think this is hard to believe. We are not more or less of a person depending on how busy we are. We are more fulfilled. We are more fulfilled as a person when we choose to say yes to the things God has given us to do and choose to say no to the things that God has not given us to do. When asked by a man, "Teacher, what is the greatest commandment of all?" Do you guys remember what Jesus said? What did he say? A little louder. Love your neighbor, yeah. As who? As yourself. That was the second commandment, or that was part 2 of the command. What was part 1 of the command? Yes, exactly. So love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. This is the greatest commandment. This is the commandment on which the whole entire Old Testament hangs, right? I think Christ said, on this law hangs all the law and the prophets. That is the whole entire Old Testament. With that in mind, I think we need to realize we can't love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul if we aren't spending time with him. And we can't love our neighbor as ourselves if we aren't prioritizing their needs as our own needs. We often prioritize our own goals and aspirations and forsake taking care of those things that God has put in our way to bless, or people to bless. I'm hoping that we'll begin to, a little more day by day, prioritize Jesus. And then he will transform our hearts to turn the needs of others into our own needs. Key takeaway number 3. She allowed fear to be the motivating factor in her life. So according to the story, what was the motivating factor that motivated her drive to get her house clean? Fear. Yeah. I was troubled for fear the master might come ere my work was done, and I hasted and worked the faster and watched the hurrying sun. According to the story, let's see here. There we go. When we are motivated by fear, 9 times out of 10, we will miss the blessing that God has in store for us. Fear, when allowed to be the motivating factor over much time, tends to give birth to resentment and bitterness. And I'm saying this from experience. Think about it. Thankfully, the main character in the story got an answer from the master in a dream, giving her understanding that he came to her door 3 times that day. But imagine if she never got an answer. Imagine if she cleaned her house out of fear every year when the master was going to come to the town to visit. And her, having never gotten an answer, would believe that the master never came to her home. As the years roll on, she would become angry at the master and ask herself questions like, why doesn't he visit me? Am I not good enough for him? I know my house is nothing fancy, but can you drop in for a moment? And as time passed, it would be easy for her to stop trying, to stop caring, to stop cleaning her house. And to even maybe get to the point where she says to herself, you know what? I don't even want the master to come. An obvious denial to the bitterness and resentment that would have been forming in her heart. And I got to say, this has been my experience for the majority of my life. I was raised to believe that God was a evil, vengeful dictator up in the sky rather than a loving father. That I was to fear him, and I'd better be perfect or else. Because if I mess up, he's going to push the zap button. And so I was afraid of God for the majority of my life. And it wasn't until recently where I began to believe that maybe that's not the case. Maybe he's not this scary, vengeful dictator up in the sky. Maybe he's a heavenly Father that actually loves me. But as the years went on, the fear became anger. I began to resent God. I didn't serve him because I loved him. I served him because, I wanted to go to heaven. In which case, he's not my God at all. I'm my own God, if all I want is to get myself to heaven. Modern psychology has taught us that when we are in a state of fear, we cannot think rationally. And if we cannot think rationally, then we definitely cannot think lovingly. I would implore you guys to allow time during your week to be introspective and ask yourself, what is the motivating factor in my life that drives me to serve my master? What motivates me to go to church? To serve others, to read my Bible, to pray before I eat? Is it fear? Is it out of a sense of obligation? I got to do this. It's what I was told to do. Or is it out of love? Is it out of a sense of joy? And just be honest with yourself. No sense in lying to yourself. Self-awareness and understanding are very healthy things. And I'll say this: it is better to tell yourself a hard truth rather than a beautiful lie. Isaiah 43:1 says, "But now this is what the Lord says, do not fear. Don't be afraid." You know, this command is the most common command throughout the whole entire Bible. It happens more than any other one. Don't be afraid. Don't fear. I wonder why God says that so many times. Is it because we're so apt to being afraid? We're so motivated by fear in our lives? He's the one that created us. If anything, he wants us to not be running away from him. Out of fear, he wants us to be running to him. And I'll just say, if you do find yourself in a state of fear, don't think God's mad at you. He's not. He's just saying, get over here. He wants to love the fear out of you. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Allow joy and love to become the motivating factors in your life behind why you do what you do. Pay attention to your thoughts and look for unhealthy patterns. It will take time to move away from fear, but consciously choose to be intentional about recognizing what motivates you and seek to grow. Key takeaway number 4. She didn't make any time to be with her master. She didn't take or make any time to be with her master. 3 times her master was right in front of her, yet she didn't even know it. She didn't recognize him. What she saw in front of her did not correlate to her master being in front of her. She didn't recognize her master. Instead, she saw a sorrowful woman. She didn't recognize her master. Instead, she saw a helpless cripple. She didn't recognize her master. Instead, she saw a sorrowful child. How many times in our day-to-day lives is our master right in front of us, and we don't even recognize him? How many times in a single day is our master calling us through the power of the Holy Spirit, saying to us, spend time with me. I'm available. I'm here. I'm ready. Your Bible's right there, sitting on your desk. Grab it. Your hands are right there. Fold them. Let's chat. And we hear that voice in our mind for a split moment, just to have that voice turned off by another voice that says, I got too much to do today. Too busy. I got a jet. Maybe later, Jesus. But do we really? Do we really have too much time or too much to do today that we don't have time? Do we really need to get going and get out the door because I got stuff to do? I think God's just asking us to pause, to slow down, and to tune in to what he has to say. I love the quote by Charles Spurgeon that says, "A Bible that's falling apart usually belongs to a person that isn't." So I'd like to encourage us to choose today to spend time with our Master. And I promise that the joy and peace that you've been seeking will be found. And now, last but not least, number 5. Being in a state of hurry killed her ability to be in a state of rest. I do not believe that it was wrong for her to get busy cleaning her house. In fact, I believe that was a very kind gesture. She wanted to have a clean house for the Master to stay in. However, things turned south for her when she entered into a state of hurry. She began to rush and became frantic with her chores before her. And it was the internal state of being in a rush that killed her ability to serve those that came to her door. Question: is there a difference between being busy and being in a rush? Yeah, I think so too. Google says that being busy is being occupied, having many things to do. Being hurried is doing those things quickly, in a rushed manner, at a rapid pace. One can be busy slowly or busy quickly. Being busy is simply an external condition. Hurry is an internal state, a mindset that results in a certain pace of living. And I think that too many of us live hurried lives. Am I the only person here that lives a hurried life? Thank you, Jaden. That's good to know. I believe that living a hurried life is extremely unhealthy. So much so that I am convinced that if the devil can't get you to sin, he'll put you in a state of hurry. Let's look at Jesus, for example. When we look at the Gospels, is it safe to say that Christ was often busy? Yeah, he had a lot to do in a very short amount of time, right? You have the responsibility of preaching to the world the love of God in the span of like 3.5 short years. It's not like he's, getting his Corvette and driving from town to town. He's walking on his feet, living homeless. This is not fast pace. This is very slow pace. When we look at the Gospels, is it safe to say that Christ was often in a hurry? No, never. Oftentimes, we find Jesus surrounded by his disciples, and guess what? They were the ones that were anxious, worried, on edge, and in a hurry. However, Jesus, through their chaotic state of mind, would remain calm and serene. What do you think kept Jesus hurry-free? He trusted the Father. Someone else? He prayed. Anyone else? Yeah, Wyatt. Yeah. He was very good at being in the moment with people. That's something my scattered brain does not comprehend. The Prince of Peace, right? Yeah, I love that. Originally here, I'll just read what I had written down. I agree with everyone's statement, but kind of lines up with what Trisha said. I believe it has to do with his making ample time to go off and be alone with his Father in prayer. And I think this is a good thing for us to do too. To go off, to be alone, and invest in time in prayer. I think that's the opposite of what the world tells us to do, right? Like, you have too many things to do. Don't slow down. In fact, speed up. We got to keep up with the Joneses. We got to make our money. We have to have that white picket fence. We have to get married. We have to have those kids. And then before you know it, you blink and you're 80. Right? That's what the world preaches. Which makes sense, because who's the prince of this world? Satan. He wants you to be in a hurry. He wants those moments that are actually really special to pass you by. And then you don't even notice they're there, and then they're gone. I think God is calling us to be more intentional about just being still, being calm, sitting in the quiet, allowing rest to become our new mindset. Professor Dallas Willard of Wheaton College once said, and I love this, in order for us to live the life of love, joy, and peace that Jesus desires so deeply for us to experience, we must eliminate hurry from our lives. Hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. I believe that being in a state of hurry kills my ability to be fully present with God and with others in any given moment. Perhaps I've been calling myself, and maybe yourself as well, to be in a state of rush, where God has been calling you and me to be in a state of rest. Matthew 11:28 and 29 says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." And so I want to encourage you to slow down, pause, say no to being in a rush. Say no to being in a constant state of hurry and anxiety. And in so doing, watch peace take the place of anxiety, restfulness to take the place of rushfulness, and tranquility take the place of chaos. In closing, my hope is that you have a busy life. A life busy with you living in the moments that God has called you into. A life where you prioritize the needs of others. A life that isn't motivated by fear. A life free of hurry and anxiety, filled with peace and restfulness, and a life where you are fully present and making time to be with your Master. And so your Master is asking you, do you have time for me today? My prayer is that you and I are not caught unaware.